The Santa Anita Saturday Stakes preview coming right up. Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle at Fail to Menace. And today we are going to be doing a stakes preview of the not one, not two, not three, but four graded stakes races taking place at Santa Anita on Saturday. There's, of course, a Kentucky Derby prep race, and we'll get to that. But there are some really nice fields in some of the turf races that are out there, including the Megahertz and the Santa Monica Stakes as well. So here, join me is a man who I might call the James Brown of horse racing, the hardest working man in the sport, Gino Bacola, who I talk with every single Friday on This Week in Stable Duel on Friday mornings. Gino, how are you doing?
Doing well, buddy. Always happy to help you out and talk some racing with you. As you mentioned, four graded stakes races coming up at Santa Anita. Unfortunately, that first one of them is going to be the all Baffert Stakes that we'll get right into. But I did think that there are a couple of really interesting grass races.
Yes.
Both the fourth race and I think the towards the back of the card, and two of those races, both the fourth and the 10th, are also part of the coast to coast pick five.
Yes.
As well.
Very important. Yeah.
They're big races this weekend, not only on the graded stake standpoint, but from a gambling perspective. If you're someone who's been playing those pick fives, which I love, low takeout, dollar wagers, they're always combining a lot of the big races from Gulfstream and Santa Anita. So there are a couple of the races that we'll be talking about also.
Absolutely. And Gino and I both have a ton of content about Gulfstream Park. Like I said, if you tune in Friday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, you listen to me, Gino, Barry Spears. We're going to go over these cards, give you some long shot plays, maybe some horses to include in that sequence as well.
Yep.
If you want to spread in a few races. So always trying to look out for you. But Gino, let's dive in and
let's do it.
Let's start with the worst one first. Maybe get that one out of the way first.
Yeah.
But we are going to go into the Robert B. Lewis Stakes, grade 3. A lot of people have made a big deal about this race. Obviously, all four entries are for Bob Baffert. Arabian Lion, the morning line favorite, is highlighted here. Newgate, Worcester, Worcester. I don't know how you want to pronounce it.
Worcester. Yeah, that's the whole podcast that we can have on how to pronounce that one.
And I'm not from Boston, and so hard to figure the longest shot of them all at 8-1. Not a lot of discussion to have here, but Gino, out of these four horses, do you have one that you think is kind of heads and shoulders? Because if people are playing this, they're probably going to have to single. Where do you like in here?
I prefer Newgate. I think the most of all of them. I think Newgate's the most seasoned. He broke his maiden in his first start at Del Mar last summer. Then he was right into graded stakes company. He was behind Cave Rock and having a meltdown in the grade 1 Del Mar Futurity. Cave Rock came back and ran second in the Breeders' Cup, having a meltdown, came back and beat him again in the Bob Hope. He was behind Forte in the Breeders' Futurity. Forte was the Breeders' Cup juvenile winner. He was also behind a horse named Red Route 1, who just came back and ran second in the Southwest and was a pretty good second last week at Oaklawn, behind another nice Baffert runner. And then Newgate was behind Reincarnate, and he just didn't get the best of trips. He was just last in that small field. He angled all the way around, kind of in between, up to take the lead, but Reincarnate was able to fight back. So I think I probably have the least amount of knocks on him. As far as Arabian Lion, he just threw in that clunker last time out. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not sure if it was a distance thing, if it was an equipment thing for him. I'm not really sure what to expect. Worcester, he's fine. He's still a maiden. I think by process of elimination, I kind of just like Newgate the most of these.
Yeah, you and I see this the same. I don't think this is one to overthink. Arabian Lion just has too many question marks. Maybe you go, well, it's Los Alamitos. But I don't know. That horse looked just off last time out. And for him to come back as the morning line favorite, not really interested in that. Worcester, I wonder if that horse really wants 2 turns as well and wants to go this kind of mile and a 16th distance. Newgate just feels like it's his time to some extent to get the graded stakes win. I have a lot of respect for this horse because this horse, as you pointed out, has shipped across the country for the Breeders' Futurity, hasn't just stayed out in California, has been running against, and Baffert has been putting him against the top class of horses that he has in his barn and just come up a little short in those races, but always gives a very honest account. And I think in this field makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and what's sort of at least worth mentioning is that as of right now, none of these horses can get points
Yes.
for the Kentucky Derby. Like, this is a points race where no horses in the race are going to be awarded points.
None.
Front
And what's funny about this is now, because the Withers has been postponed because of bad weather, there is now only one Derby prep race, the Holy
Yeah.
Bull, that will actually give out points this weekend.
Yeah.
And so it's just a interesting state of affairs. Obviously, we saw last year what Baffert did and the ownership groups did there, transferring
There's
horses
a court
to the
hearing
barn.
right now, actually,
There
right?
is.
Like,
Yep.
ongoing. Like, we're recording on Thursday night, and I think
Mhm.
on Friday he actually is testifying. I was just sort of following along with some of
Yeah.
it. So they're trying to get it overturned. But as of right now, these horses, if they want to run in the Kentucky Derby, they're going to have to go elsewhere.
Yep.
And to get some points.
Yep, they're going to have to go to another barn. And I mean, the thing about, I've talked with some other people about this. The thing about the Kentucky Derby points thing is, it's important to remember last year, Rich Strike got in this race based upon a third place effort in one Kentucky Derby prep race. So it doesn't take much to kind of get you into the Kentucky Derby field. If you're able to switch barns, get one good effort, that usually is enough points to get you qualified. But Gino and I both see Newgate here as kind of a single and move on in this particular race. But let's move on to the turf and the Megahertz Stakes, grade 3 for 4-year-old and up, filly and mares, 1 mile on the turf. This is an 8-horse race. Morning line favorite is a Phil D'Amato horse, who he does have 3 entries in this race. I always say he's kind of the West Coast Chad Brown. And he wins at the same rate out there. He's a dynamite barn on the turf. He's been winning a lot lately, but I feel like there's some opportunities for value in this race. Gino,
Yes.
I'm interested. Where are you looking in this one?
Yeah, a few horses that'll definitely be on my radar. I think it's a really nice spot for Closing Remarks, who's the number 4. Closing Remarks, I think, is probably the one to beat in here. She was behind Queen Goddess in 3 of her last 5 races. She was behind Shantasara in another one of those recent races that you look at, which was like 6 starts back. So if you're just looking at her recent form, she's been facing horses that came back and were 1-2 in the Pegasus Filly and Mare Turf last week. So that form was very much flattered. And Closing Remarks was making her first start since March, when she ran on December the 31st in the Robert Frankel that day. So that was a race that she probably needed. She'll be a little bit sharper. She'll be making, another, just really her first start as a 5-year-old mare. And with mares, I actually like them when they get to 4 and 5. Sometimes that's when you find them really at their best here. She'll be on the radar for me, no doubt about it. Nadette is also on the radar for me, for sure. Second time in North America. She's the Neil Drysdale trainee. She was behind Rhea Moon. Rhea Moon has won 3 in a row. We just saw Kitty Katana, who Nadette defeated, come back and win in a first level allowance race over the weekend. And Nadette ran very well. She was just last in a field of 11. She was about 10 lengths off. She tipped out at the top of the lane, widest of all. She really got going late. She was a good second that day behind a horse who just got the jump on her. And if she gets the trip, I think she will come running really nicely. So those two will be probably on all of my tickets and definitely on the top of my radar for this race.
Yeah, I think this is a race that is really intriguing for me. So there's a couple of horses that stick out to me, just to give you a few others. Hamwood Flyer for Phil D'Amato. This is a horse that we know where he's going to be, or she's going to be. She is going to be about 8 lengths clear of everybody else out in the front end, and she's just going to try to run them off their feet. That's kind of what she tries to do. I will say she has historically been running against, last time out, obviously running in a grade 1 in the Matriarch against Regal Glory, Pizza Bianca, very good class of horse, just kind of, wore down late at a mile against, like I said, a better caliber of horse, but has demonstrated the ability to kind of go 8 lengths clear of the field and hold on. And I think is an intriguing horse, obviously coming off a little bit of a layoff, more of a freshening. The works have looked very, very sharp coming out of this, as you might suspect, for a very sharp barn. But like I said, kind of the other D'Amato to some extent there with Juan Hernandez, who is a great fit for a jockey who likes to get out and go on the front end and should give her a good ride. The other horse that I like underneath is the 7 Quattro L.
Absolutely. That was my other, and that's probably like a stable dual horse, right?
Yes.
Like from like a horse to give out, because that would have been probably one that I think we can talk about tomorrow, because she's super honest and she's always right there with this group. I don't know if she's always wants to win quite as much, or she's going to need a trip, right? I don't know if it's necessarily that she doesn't want to win, more so that she just needs things to really kind of go her way to win. But she always shows up with a good effort. I think she's going to come closing. She gives you a good run for your money. and she might be like forgotten about a little bit in this race. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocked if she's kind of even around 10-1 or so, and
Yes.
even floats up a bit.
I agree with you on that entirely. And just to really put a point on what you were saying, this is a horse that is 10 for 13 career in the money. To your point, doesn't run a bad race. 6 for 7 in the money at a mile on the turf. Again, just consistency here. So if you're playing any sort of vertical wagers, feels like a horse that you can include underneath for sure. In maybe an exacta or a trifecta. Absolutely. Gino referenced Stable Duel, great Stable Duel horse, I think as well. For a pretty small amount of money, you're going to get a very honest effort here, and has been running against these horses as well. And just if you look at those buyer speed figures, just incredibly consistent, just almost metronome like. Everything's between like 86 and 89. You just know
Yep.
exactly what you're going to get out of her.
Yep, and she should get a pretty nice trip because it
Yeah.
looks like with Hamwood Flyer, that one will at least make sure there's an honest pace. With Bay Storm right next door, I don't think Bay
Yeah.
Storm will be too far behind. Those two could be forwardly placed. And then you'll have a horse like One Silk Stocking who's stretching back out from going down the hill. I don't
Yeah.
think she wants to be too far out of it. School Dance isn't as quick as them, but I think from the outside, she'll, middle of the pack, she'll try to be at least third or fourth close up. So I think this
Yep.
should be an honest enough pace for a horse like Quattrell to have a chance in here.
Yeah, absolutely. So good betting race there in the megahertz. Let's go to later in the card, the third of the 4 graded stakes races, the Santa Monica Stakes Grade 2, 4-year-old and up fillies and mares, 7 furlongs on the dirt, highlighted really by 2 horses. I think, Fun to Dream, the Bob Baffert horse, the morning line favorite at 8-1, and Awake at Midnight, the Doug O'Neill horse at 5-2. You do have Lady T as well as Samurai Charm, also 3-1 and 4-1 respectively. Gino, I'm interested. I'm a big fan of Awake at Midnight. I think you know that. I've given out that horse a few times.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that maybe this is her time. She came up just short against Fun to Dream last time. I'm interested in how you see this one.
Yeah, I mean, she's beaten Fun to Dream before,
Yeah.
and she had like I don't want to say it was no excuses. She just was a little bit wider. Like, Fun to Dream just got the jump on her. Honestly,
Yeah.
that's what it was. She came running. She still looked. I thought she was going to get her that day too.
I did too.
We both
too.
needed her for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's just going to be offering you a little bit more value than Fun to Dream. No real knocks on what Fun to Dream has done as of late. I think just sort of where Fun to Dream is drawn in this race, I don't know if she's going to get the same sort of trip she got in her last race, which was kind of that sort of, forwardly placed sort of front easy trip.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely more interested in Wake at Midnight, and I think I do give a Lady T a little bit of a shot.
Nice.
I think in looking at the races she ran last year,
Mm-hmm.
those races are good enough to compete with Fun to Dream and Awake at
Yes.
Midnight in
Yes.
here. Now, this year, just on speed figures alone, she hasn't quite been as good, but her races haven't been bad, and
Mm-hmm.
I know what she can get to at basically her top level. So I do give her a shot from the outside, and I think I would lean, I don't mind taking a little swing against Fun to Dream in here. I think I might try to lean with the outside too, if you're playing some kind of middle rolling exotics and get a little more value with those two. Fun to Dream obviously is the one to beat.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, the one to beat. But Gino and I, if you've watched us, we always try to beat chalk, and
Oh, yeah.
or as much as humanly possible, we try to beat chalk. Gino even more than me. But I will say, I just think Awake at Midnight's been training really well. Also for Doug O'Neill, I mean that 59-3, 5 furlong work last time out in January 28th. It really seemed to have come out of that December 26th opening day meet at Santa Anita in the La Brea. Seemed to come out of that really healthy. Bullet work on January 13th, 47-4, 4 furlong. It just seems to really be feeling herself. And it should be pointed out, this is a horse that kind of started routing a little bit towards the end of last year and is now getting back to sprinting again. Second
This
time
is her
sprinting. This is her lane. Exactly right. Exactly right. Also, second time out from the Breeders' Cup. That Breeders' Cup, we always talk about how that kind of takes it out of horses. You might not expect their best effort first time after that. Second time, hopefully a little bit better. So Gino and I are both going to try to beat Fun to Dream here. I'm going to try to do with Awake at Midnight. Gino's going to throw in a little bit of Lady T action for John Sheriff's at 3-1 in the Santa Monica Stakes. Well, let's move on to the final of the 4 graded stakes races on Saturday's card. Thunder Road Stakes, Grade 3, for 4-year-olds and up, a mile on the turf. The favorite in this 11 horse field. You'll notice that yes, Cabo Spirit is number 12, but the number 11 horse scratch. So it's an 11 horse field with the 12th horse in there. And so, like I said, it's morning line favorite is Air Force Red for Leonard Pallett, 3-1. Gino, this is, I think, the most wide open of all the races. I know I'm on a little bit of a price. Well, where are you going in this one?
This is a fun race. Air Force Red is super honest too, and I love him because you just know what you're going to get from him.
Yep.
You know, he's going to go right to the front, and he will take them as far as he can go. If he gets other pace opposition in here, he probably won't win this. But if he gets out front, he's faster than I think everybody else in here. He should probably have a length, but there's a few other horses who could definitely be right behind him pressing, and he's not, from a price standpoint, he's not all that intriguing, right? He's probably not a horse who I would want to completely chuck out and leave off of exotics if you're playing like a pick 4 or a pick 5, because if he does get out front, he can absolutely steal the race. No doubt about it. Do I want to bet him at 5-2 or 2-1 to win though? Probably not. So I'm looking elsewhere. The horse to me that I'm intrigued by is Dark Shift, the number 10. This is a horse who is now just going to be making his second start in North America. He was a horse who was running overseas and not necessarily at the top levels, but he started to really come into his own. I think he had a stretch where he won 4 out of 5 races. His last race before coming over to Keeneland, he was only beaten a neck when he finished 3rd in a field of 21 behind a next out winner. So this is a horse who has dealt with traffic, different types of trips. And then honestly, in his race at Keeneland, he shows up on October the 23rd. He gets a little bit of action that day, but then he has just a brutal start. He gets bumped and then completely crossed over on at the start, and just like a hole, he has to back right out of a hole. And then he has to settle 11th in a field of 12. At one point, he's about 8 lengths off. He's 3 wide. Then he moves to the inside, and he starts to close pretty well from the back of the pack, but he was chasing lone speed that day. So he has a slow start. It's his first start in a few months. It's his first start in North America. He gets bumped all over at the break, and he's chasing lone speed. Just a lot of things were up against him in that start. Now, in this race, if a horse like Air Force Red gets beat, it's probably because he goes too fast early, and it sets up for a horse from off the pace like an Air Force Red or like a Dark Shift who's 8-1, and I think will be in that 6-1-ish plus range. I think he fits very nicely in this spot, and he's a major player that will be a horse who will be on all my exotics.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said there, and you're right. He had a miserable time first time out. I watched the replay of that race, and that was a tough one to watch. And should come running late, and will actually absolutely be coming running late. I think the highest U.S. time form pace late speed figures in the entire field. I do think the 9 Hit the Road is a little intriguing. Blinkers coming off, second time back. This is a horse that's 6 for 11 winning at a mile on the turf, 7 for 4. Or I'm sorry, 4 for 7, I should say, winning at Santa Anita on the turf.
He's a classy horse. He's really classy. Yeah. He's a grade 1 winner, and he was a horse who he would have been a player going into the Breeders' Cup. I think he got a little bit sick going into the Breeders' Cup before, and he had to miss it. And then he was in the Pegasus, and then following that, he just didn't have the best of years. Like, he was off for a while. If you give him another race or two, I expect him to get back into that good form. He's a really quality horse. He will be in the mix for me in a lot of exotics. I think the other one that's a price that I'll probably throw into my pick 4. And again, when we mention like stable duel, it's Irideo, the 6.
Oh, yeah. I it's funny. I love this horse. 15-1, you're getting huge value.
Yeah.
I keep waiting for this horse to I want this horse just to be like a little bit better than he is.
I know. Me too.
And I think he can be. That's the thing.
He might get a better trip in here also, right? If there's a little bit more speed, I think he's a little better at a mile in here. They've cut him back a couple times. They've cut him back hoping that those races would have more pace for him. And unfortunately, when he cut back last time, he caught Air Force Red just going gate to wire. They went quick, but it wasn't a contested pace, so it didn't really set up for him. He's good at a mile, and he's capable. Like, his best race is pretty close to most of these best races.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's just, like we're saying, he's a little bit inconsistent, so you don't necessarily want to be all in on him. But again, if you're playing like a late pick 4, or you're playing one of these pick 5 wagers, and this is a race where you're throwing a couple horses in, I don't mind him at that price.
Absolutely not. No, he's at a very good price right now, much better price than he's been in the past. So absolutely agree. I'll throw one last horse out there, and I always like horses that have this type of form, but I'll throw in the 7. There Goes Harvard, a horse that has only tried the turf 3 times and has been in the exacta all 3 times with 2 wins. This is a horse that is probably a better dirt horse, but is still a really good turf horse. And, 2 times out ago, beat Defunded, who we just saw finish second at the Pegasus World Cup. Also, beating Royal Ship that day, and has run against some really good horses coming back from a little bit of a layoff. The works have been dynamite for trainer Michael McCarthy leading up to this. Johnny V's aboard. And again, this is a horse that, threw out a 94 Beyer speed figure number last time he was on the turf, which absolutely holds up in this field at 8-1. Maybe you get a little bit of value. Again, kind of the muddied running lines, only 3 times ever on the turf in his career, but has run really well every single time. So another kind of interesting horse to potentially include at a big price.
Could be a little fresh off the bench, right?
Yeah.
Chasing Air Force Red, and he could be sitting in a pretty good spot. He may be like third or so, right? Chasing this horse, and he could fall into a good trip if Air Force Red goes a little too fast and he's right there. I kind of prefer sometimes coming off the bench too on the turf. I think sometimes it's a little bit easier. It's a little softer on the horse's feet, coming off like a long layoff for a horse who may have to run sort of hard like this. Yeah. Can he stack himself like in that second, third, fourth position, right? That flight right behind what will probably be Air Force Red. I don't have any problem including him in exotics at what's a very fair price. There should be a bunch of 6 to 10-1 shots in here, right? That's why, even though I like Air Force Red, I don't dislike him because of his speed. He probably should be a little bit higher, right? I think he should probably be like 4-1 in this race just because how contentious it is and how tough it is.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I mean, the one thing about Air Force Red we should point out is a lot of his success has been sprinting or on the downhill turf course, and he's only 1 for 3 winning at a mile, and has never. And if he didn't win, he didn't hit the board either. So he's only 1 for 3 hitting the board at a mile. So there's absolutely a reason to kind of poke a hole in the favorite here,
absolutely,
at a short price in a really talented field. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to go after a big price here in the Thunder Road Stakes. Well, that wraps up the Santa Anita Stakes preview. Gino, thank you so much for joining me for this. And we referenced our weekly This Week in Stable Duel on Friday mornings, but you have about 8 million things going on all the time. So talk to me. What else going on? What are you covering these days?
Yeah, best place to follow me is on Twitter. It's me, Gino B, and I have a podcast. It's called That's What G Said Podcast. Just like what you're doing here every weekend, whatever the focus is, whatever the big races are for that weekend. Sometimes Gulfstream or Santa Anita, Oaklawn. I'll always have a focus there. I'll always usually talk about 2 different tracks. Like on my podcast this week, we'll talk about Gulfstream and with Angela Herman. We'll talk about Santa Anita with Colin Sheehan, who's going to be joining me to talk some Santa Anita also on the show. We football season's finishing up right now, but we had previews for all the NFL games, and then we'll be making a transition to talk NBA and college basketball for the next couple months on there. And then anything that goes on in the world of Star Wars or Marvel. We have Ant-Man coming up in just a few weeks. That movie's going to be coming out. And then we have Mandalorian season 3, which will be coming out pretty soon. If there's a movie or a TV show in the world of Star Wars and Marvel, we do a recap, a deep dive, a nerdy look at like scene by scene, everything that's going on, what went right, what went wrong. So I promise you, as in-depth as we get in horse racing, I do that with everything. And I'm that much of a maniac. So Matt, I can't tell you enough how much I love talking with you each and every week. It's a blast. Absolutely. And it's funny, we had somebody tell us last week, you guys agreed so much. What the heck, which is really funny. But I was thinking, like, I did a show a little later in the evening, and I like everybody that was on the show, my opinion was completely different then, So it just shows you that some people you kind of look at the races similarly, and now we kind of talk so much that we kind of, I think I do some things that you do, and I think you probably have picked up some things from me, and
absolutely
it's a lot of fun. Like we rattle through these races real quick, but we sort of knew exactly where we were going and what we're doing. And you and Barry have become 2 of my best buds that I've never even met in person. How crazy is that still? So
that is the beauty of the horse racing community, and all these videos we get to, people get to follow us follow along with us. We, hear from them all the time about, feedback and how much they like the shows and things along those lines. And always looking for an opportunity to meet. So if you're out at the track sometime at Santa Anita or Del Mar out west, make sure to bump in and say hi to Gino. If you're at the track here in the Mid-Atlantic, Laurel, Colonial Downs, what have you, and you see a big-nosed Italian guy wearing a cap, come say hi to me. But Gino, thanks again. Really appreciate it. And for all of you listening, make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits and make sure to follow me on Twitter at the handle @Failed to Menace. Until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.